And here we go. All right, welcome to dropping in with that Pipeline Audio number 7, and hopefully this one's going to be about some acoustics and cool stuff. And oops, and I got to mute my stream. Damn. Okay, there we go. Sorry. And so we've got an extra special celebrity guest tonight. So I guess extra special celebrity guest. Can you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're up to and what you do?
Well, my name is Scott Veenstra, and I kind of do a lot of different things. I'm a drummer, so I've got that, and I'm engineer, and I have specialized in acoustics. I worked for Real Traps with Ethan Weiner for a number of years, and have done projects on my own, et cetera, et cetera. So. Yeah, just all kinds of different venues and things like that, from recording studios to performance venues to churches and offices and high-end listening rooms and all that stuff. So I guess that's me in a nutshell, sort of. I've been around the whole Reaper community for a bunch of years, although I kind of took a hiatus from that, and so I'm kind of coming back around a little bit, because I'm doing starting to do more with recording and audio engineering again. So,
all right. Okay, what's going on there? Do we have are you so you're listening through speakers right now? I'm starting to get to the finally getting the hang of this, where I'm actually wearing headphones and stuff. It took me a while to get this, but that's okay.
Are you is it okay, or are you getting a funny feedback, or?
Nah, not really.
Okay.
We're fine.
I mean, I could put some headphones on.
Yeah. This is the funniest part about this is we're gonna here I it's doing kind of like an audio engineers podcast, so it's just stuff that we'd like to listen to, shop talk, and then of course the audio quality is horrible and they're doing all the audio stuff wrong. So it'd just be like, every time you see a mechanic, he's never got a good car, right? So
right,
that's the same kind of thing.
Well, we're doing a lot of experimenting, I think it seems like here. So.
Oh yeah, I'm hitting the ground running. I'm trying to have a whole ton of stuff in the can. So, well, it'll get there. I'm just barely getting that OBS or OBS or whatever to work right. But that's good. So Ethan Weiner is like the James Randi of audio to me. So it's it's pretty cool you got to work with him.
Yeah. Yeah, Ethan's a good guy.
Like I spend so much of my time, and I said this in a couple episodes. It's my penance. It's to do some audio myth busting, because I was raised in that crazy, almost audiophile religion where everything has to be Class A, discrete, this and that. And I was telling people who are just getting into it that they need to spend all this money on this magical nonsense that, even though I had a lab full of testing equipment and I could test it, everybody who I looked up to, all the professional scholars in my field, said, "Oh no, just because it tests right doesn't mean it sounds right. It only sounds right if it's made before this year and is made out of this magical junk." And I knew better. I totally knew better. I don't know why I kept believing that for so long. And then so now that I've been liberated and deconverted from that theology, I'm doing my penance by trying to really bust these marketing myths. So it's awesome to have Ethan around, and professionally, he takes all the hits for it. Like, I can say this stuff, but they beat up on him, man.
I know. Yeah, I've been witness to many basically bitch fights in the acoustics community with where people really went after, they'd really go after people, and I think the acoustics community itself, I mean, it's sort of this weird dark art anyway, because there's a lot of stuff that we haven't been able to 100% measure or prove, So I mean, we can test how it sounds. There's certain things that sometimes they don't exactly know. They have theories about why it works a certain way, but you know, so sometimes people get attached to a certain theory, and I mean, I think that can apply to anybody, and I think it can apply to the whole skeptic thing too, because I think there are things still that we aren't measuring yet, or we aren't able to measure yet exactly. But again, you know, I think there's most of what we hear is hype. There's so much hype that you know.
And generally, I would say that we can make a pretty good prediction based on, you know, if we know the parameters, we can tell you, hey, this room's going to work pretty good. Or it should, even though it's subjective. If we know the sizes and we know what we're doing, we should be able to predict decently what's going to happen, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because you know it's going to have room resonances based on the size. It's, you know, it's kind of interesting. The room that I'm in right now is just basically my living room, and I haven't even put any acoustics treatment in here, but it actually sounds pretty good in here, in part because there are doorways and openings that work as natural bass traps.
No.
So I'm not getting all this resonance. Like if this were all closed up, I would in this room I would be getting a lot of resonance, probably to a degree where you'd even be able to hear it over this broadcast, I would think.
No. So in my room that's showing in this picture here, we used to have carpet on the floor, and I don't know. I know it's just some kind of a holdover thing, but I can't stand carpet in music rooms. It's like somebody took an EQ and just knocked off the top, and it's not something I can really ever get back. But when we took the carpet off and put that floor in, it got to where it's just feeding back in there constantly when bands are in there trying to practice. So we just put up some little Roxel safe and sound things from here and there, and I just kept putting them on the corners and walls until the room stopped feeding back, and I'm really, really, really happy with the drum sounds I'm getting on recording now. And you know, I know you could stick foam all over the place or whatever, because it's a big enough room where I don't have the kind of bass problems that I have with normal tiny rooms, but
Right.
and I'm sure it could be way, way better. But what I didn't want to do is just end up making it back like the carpet, you know. So I figured if I'm going to take stuff down, I'm going to take it down as evenly as I can. And so far, I've never been so happy with my own room ever. And it's actually slightly bigger than the room we had at Vintage where we recorded drums. So it, you know, I'm sure it could use a whole lot more, but you can look at it and you just see these like 1x4 Roxel
Right.
you know, panels in there. But it's you know, it's just going around with a pair of drumsticks and looking for flutter echoes, and I just stick those things in where I was finding them, and ended up turning out pretty good.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's the thing. You know, you do get a bigger room, you get a little further away from the walls, you don't have to worry about it quite so much. But yeah, the carpet thing is just, I mean, yeah, you suck all the top end out of it, and then you're still left with all these funny resonances. And you know, it's good to have, you know, if you have a big enough room, it's good to have a little bit of some ambience in there, as long as you're not getting so much comb filtering that it's you know, that it's interfering with the direct sound. You know, I had a nice big studio a few years back, until we had I had a partnership with some guys, and one of the guys he had been on the road with the band, and he kind of lost it on the road, and he came back and he was just pretty out, you know, he was kind of a mess. And so we ended up having to shut the studio down, which was unfortunate, because it was a great room. We were getting just great drum sounds in there. I had it set up live end, dead end, so had a lot of treatment on the back behind the walls, and then we had on the other end, because it was a live work loft kind of a situation, large, big, open living room. And then we had a kitchen that was in there, and it was all tile. So we just left that untreated because it was far enough away from the drums, and we were getting an even enough bass response in there. So with with the bass traps that I had, and then we could put room mics in there and have very, very usable reverb. And then we had in the bathroom, there was one corner where you could just get that impact of the bass drums.
Oh man.
And it was, I'm so sad to have lost that room, because it was just really it would have probably been the best place in town where I live, to record drums, because it was just set up perfectly for that.
Oh wow. Yeah,
so
that's a bummer.
Yeah.
So I think that the thing people most wanted me to ask, if I could get somebody on acoustics in, is what do you think of this new technologies that are letting you allegedly letting you mix on headphones, like the SonarWorks one, which I think is pretty much just applying an impulse response backwards or something. Have you seen this stuff?
I haven't used it at all, so it's kind of hard. I think I've seen stuff like that before in the past, where it kind of gives you, it basically feeds a little bit from the right into the left, and from the left into the right, in a way that gives you this a little bit of the same kind of feeling of the dimension of listening to speakers in an open space. I mean, I think if you don't have any acoustic, if you have a really bad acoustic situation, it's certainly better, I think, to do something like that, at least to get things as close as you can. It's always hard if you're in a tiny room, and you got walls real close, you're 6 by 10 room or something like that, and it's all you have. You're not going to be able to get good mixing in there with monitors. So I think it's a reasonable tool. I say that not having used it myself to mix, but I have listened to some of the earlier ones that did that, and it does give you a different feel from just listening on the headphones.
So I'm not sure how the one I tried works exactly, but I ordered a like they have different profiles for different headphones and stuff. So I ordered these headphones that I used to hate back in the studio days. These AKG K240s or something, but I think back in the day used to use aluminum solder or silver solder, something that just made them impossible to fix, and they broke all the time. So it was really, I couldn't stand them, but this was like the one that I kept seeing people recommend for this. And so you put the headphones up, then you load the headphone profile, and I'm not sure if this one what exactly this thing did, feed it left and right and stuff, but I mixed the song, I sent it to my mastering engineer, and it turned out okay. And so I don't know. I really don't know. But my room is horrible. And eventually, my mixing room, anyway, or whatever I call the mixing room, is really my office or tech room at the school. Sooner or later, I have 2 bags full of that Roxel Safe and Sound. Maybe I'm just going to pile it on the walls here and hope that does something. But if these headphone things work, I mean, who knows? That might be the future, where you got so many people in this world. The real estate's getting less and less. So we may end up, maybe even headphones are too big. We're going to end up on earbuds or something in order to mix albums. Who knows?
Yeah, well, even those are getting better and better.
Ah, yeah, I didn't know.
The in-ear monitors and things like that.
Oh yeah,
pretty nice. So why not? If you can get a sense of the space, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is the sense of the space, and hearing the phasing issues. I think, I mean, you can see some of that with metering too, with phase metering, but
Yeah. I remember, back in the day, you had to be able to read a set of NS10s to tell how much bass was in there, even if you couldn't hear it, right? You're looking at the way the cone's moving. You kind of knew after a while, and plus what the speaker was doing to your sound, even if you couldn't hear the bass, it kind of lets you know. And I wonder if that's how it'll get with the headphones. Like, I mean, it allegedly the profile reverses the curve or whatever, and you're going to end up with the bass that you should be getting in the headphones. But that's different than the low end really hitting you, I think. So I think it's still a guess, but it seems to work.
right.
And luckily I've had the same mastering engineers since the 90s, so they'll catch me when I start steering wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But there's so much nonsense and misinformation and just absolute crap out there about any part of audio engineering, but really one that's just rife with it is acoustics. So let's say you had a bad, but whatever, like let's say this room, okay, this is like 8-foot ceilings, maybe probably just exactly 8 feet across, and then maybe 12 feet deep. What do you do if you want to make it just even passable as a mix room, any room? Like what are the steps you're really supposed to take? Not you take a picture for Oralex and then send them $5 million and tell them what color you want it, and then all of a sudden you put the right pictures in the right place, and you get magical sound or whatever and a Grammy award. But in real life, what are you supposed to do? What are the steps?
Obviously the corners are going to be are huge. The corners are where all the room resonances are going to collect. So you're going to want to put good broadband absorption in there, and of course the we usually use Owens Corning 703 for those kind of panels, or a similar Rockwell. Johns Manville makes something. Rockwell still makes something. There's a couple, and it's that same density, which tends to be the going to give you the best all around performance for bass trapping and broadband trapping. So you want to get those corners. That means the vertical corners and also the horizontal corners along the sides of the room. That's where you're going to really help with your with your low frequency resonances. And then also, I mean, there's the 38% rule. So for setting up your mix station, so you want to mix down the long. You want to fire your speakers down the long way of the room, and obviously, when you've got an 8x12 room, it's not a huge difference, but it's enough of a difference that it's worth it if you can. Right now, the room I'm in, I don't have my things firing down the length of the room because it's just not practical. But if you can, that's the way to go. You set it so your listening position is right at 38% of the distance from the front of your room to the back of the room.
So wait a second. So every single studio, from all the guys with the magically special sideburns and the spiky hair and the spray tans that we hear, 10 new secrets of mixing, just subscribe now. All those guys with their speakers shoved right up against the front wall, those guys are wrong.
Yep.
They can't be wrong. They have special sideburns and spray tans.
Well, see, but that's the thing. You got to have you got to have all that stuff in order for that to really work. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, they're wrong. They're definitely. I mean, when you have them shoved up right against the wall, you're getting resonances right at the speaker, right at and around the speaker. So you want to get those speakers away from the walls as much as you can. That's why bigger rooms are better. The closer you are to the walls, the more interference you're going to have of the reflected sound off the walls with the direct sound from the speakers.
So if my room is 8 by 12, I end up with the speakers in about 8 feet, so 4 feet from the wall or so. That's about the 38%, or maybe a little bit more. So I'm actually,
well, your listening spot where you sit is going to be that at that 38%.
well, okay.
And then you're going to have those speakers then in an equal triangle from your head. So the distance apart should be equal to the distance of each of them to your head.
Okay, so it's funny that the first thing you're talking about here is placement. And normally if you go to any acoustic, I mean there's a couple of good ones, but you go to any of the commercial sites, the first thing they're going to tell you about is a product.
Right.
It's not going to be about placing the stuff right in your room. It's about buy this colored thing or that special shaped thing and sign up for our newsletter. It's not really about so placement. So you're going with placement first, like it's crazy. That's how you're saying it. So first of all, get the placement right. And then what do we do?
That's going to help. I mean, obviously, there are certain situations that are going to make a different placement impossible, but those are important places to start if you can. Those are the ideal, because if you're too close to that wall, you're going to get at so many feet, you're going to get a certain resonance off that wall, and that's going to be, you're going to get a peak or a null right at your listening point. The closer you are to the wall, the more of those things you're going to get in really key frequencies. So that's why in a big studio, in a high-end studio, you're going to have a bigger room, and that's the difficulty we have when we're dealing with the bedroom studio thing, or we're just cramming a studio in the corner, which is another thing that gets messed up, is people will set a little desk in the corner and their monitor right in the corner, and then their computer monitor, and then they're going to have their speakers on either side of that corner. You're already at a huge disadvantage because you're sitting right in a place where all of the room resonances collect. So that's the same. I would say even, drum recording is probably, if you set your drums at that 38% point in your room, that is also a good place for recording. Because that's where it's kind of where you're going to have without the treatment, you're going to have the best overall sound, the least overall problems, I think.
Yeah, in my case, like when I can pull them out front, it especially before I started putting those things in there, it definitely was easier to deal with. But this is like a school, they're teaching in there all the time, so I got to get the drums as far back as I possibly can. So I may actually end up putting more stuff on that wall, but right now I'm telling you, I'm so happy with the drum sounds that who knows, but yeah, I could see in just a normal room having the drums up against the wall it's a weird thing. Like I don't know, maybe you can explain it a lot better, but for me it's just a smear. Like it doesn't really sound like echoes back there. It just sounds like you just smeared especially the cymbals and kind of the snare. Like the snare has like a weird goofy sound plus like one really loud sound that comes out of it that's not even there.
Right, because at that point you're getting comb filtering off the wall. So if at a certain place, maybe that one resonance that's popping out at that distance from the wall is where that frequency lines up in the same, the wave is at the same point, so it enhances the sound or makes it louder at that frequency. And then other frequencies are being they're being canceled out because of the way the wave is coming off the wall. So that's what when we talk about comb filtering, when you're coming off that wall, you have at different lengths, at whatever wavelength that that frequency is at certain points in the room, it's going to either enhance it so it boosts the level, the amplitude of the frequency, or it's going to cancel it out because of the phase relationship. So, go ahead.
And you're scattering that across all kinds of frequencies too, not just the one, right?
Right, the whole frequency range, and so drums themselves are a full frequency, the full frequency spectrum. You're getting the whole thing, and so so you're getting all kinds of wash off the cymbals, reflection of that, and that's going to affect it. You're going to lose out on some punch, perhaps, depending on what distance away from the wall. And that's where really, if you have to be close to a wall, I would always put as much absorption back there, broadband absorption. Either what's the density of that stuff that you're using there?
I have no idea. It's Roxel Safe and Sound is 3 inches thick, and I guess I have it about an inch or so away from the wall.
Okay. Is it close to the density of the 703, or is it not quite that?
I think it's about the same. I think the 3 inches is about the same as 703 2-inch. I remember Ethan saying something that it's not always the density that is. What is he saying? Something about gas exchange and well, I don't even know.
Right. But, yeah. Well, if it's thicker, then the density isn't as important. You're.
Oh yeah, maybe that was it.
Because at some point, what you're doing is the sound comes through and it vibrates those fibers, and it turns that energy into heat. And dissipates it, so it's not reflecting back at you, it's just absorbing it, or at least a certain amount of it. So if you don't have as much, or if it's not as dense but it's twice as thick and twice as thick, half as dense. I don't remember I would have to look at all that stuff up, which I don't remember any of that stuff these days. I always have to go look that stuff up, but
yes, I think they said is about. It's just you're going to end up losing a lot more space with the Roxel than you would with the 703 because you got an extra inch thickness.
Well, because if it's denser, you're able to use less thickness when it's denser like that. So,
but if it was only density, then you would just have a 2-inch thick piece of plywood, right? But that wouldn't actually absorb anything,
right? Because it doesn't. The plywood is not porous in the way that the insulation is. No. So the insulation is all these fibers, whereas the board is going to act as a membrane more, and it'll absorb at a certain resonant frequency, whereas having something like the fiberglass or rock wool insulation, it gives you the sound goes into there and it vibrates each of those fibers. I'm not explaining it in the best, most scientific way.
Well, this is tricky stuff.
It is, but that's why the fiberglass works so well, is because it's all these fibers and they're densely packed, and it gives the sound waves something to work with, basically. Instead of just reflecting off of it, it moves those, and that density, prevents that reflection off the hard surfaces. Because a cement wall, or that cinder block wall you got back there, that resonates too at a certain frequency, and that does absorb certain frequencies that don't come back through, so, but it's really, really low resonant frequency there. Whereas the rock wool has its broadband, it's more broadband absorption. So
yeah, I remember we were just a couple months ago, we were arguing about how to deal with some of the stuff in the room, and this guy's friend was telling him, that the walls were going to become speakers, which is, that's true to a certain extent, but the walls are pretty rigid. So I figured where the walls would resonate would be pretty low. So I wasn't really all that worried. I'm like, if I start seeing these like 20 hertz spikes or something in the recording, I'll worry about it. But so far it hasn't happened.
Yeah, I forget what it is, what the resonant frequency. I mean, it's probably somewhere in the single digits.
Oh, wow. But we do have like some of the walls in there are some kind of masonry thing. But even still, like you get energized that room a whole lot and not really hear the walls, because I think a lot of us are familiar with resonant rooms when we're talking about really thin, like here in Hawaii, lots of people still have rice paper doors and stuff, and you can excite them with the guitar, like no joke. They just put your amp up a little bit and you can start hearing the wall actually talking back to you.
Okay.
It's pretty crazy. Or especially like if you take an electric guitar and just put it on one of these rice paper walls, you got an amplifier. It's the coolest thing, even with just an electric guitar, not plugged in or anything. You touch the body of the guitar to the wall, and you can hear it.
That makes sense. Sure. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I mean, really, at this stage, we're looking at the room we're looking at here. I mean, those are hard boundaries, and yes, some sound goes through those, and there is some resonance, but you need broadband absorption there. So really, behind that drum set, if you could take, good 4-inch thickness of the safe and sound, and maybe an inch or two gap behind it, and put that all behind that whole area there with those drums, I think you'd be really happy with that. You'd find a lot cleaner drum sound. I mean, I've had that. Album I was recording in a studio a couple of years back. Was a small room, but it was paneling, so it was in a basement. So behind the drums was concrete, and then ahead of the drums was paneling opening out, out into the basement. So there was a lot of sound that went through there, and that wasn't reflecting the bass back super hard like a concrete wall would.
No.
But and he had some bass trapping. He had a diffuser. That's another thing. I tend to not recommend diffusers. We can talk about that too. Diffusers in small rooms, I tend to recommend against those for a number of reasons. You're always better in a small room to go with absorption. So, but anyway, in that room, he had a great sounding kit in there, but there were certain frequencies that, we were really struggling with, and I could hear it while I was playing, and the engineer was like, I kept telling him, man, you gotta get some bass traps back there, and he was like, yeah, I know, but then he finally did, and the sound is just night and day. Now you've got a lot more clarity and punch to those drums going into the mics. You're not, because when you don't have the sound right at the source, when you're getting a whole mess of comb filtering right at the instrument, all of that goes into the mics, and then you got to try to EQ that out. And And so the more you can get that right, get rid of any of that comb filtering at the source, the less EQ you're going to have to do. Then you're just going to be doing, pulling out whatever, a few, bad frequencies that are getting in the way, or rather than having to EQ the hell out of it just to get it to sound like drums.
Yeah. Yeah, there may be some more panels behind that drum set in the future here, but like right now, I'm just, compared to back when it had the carpet in there and stuff, I'm so happy with the drum sounds. I had a couple that are mixed already that are good, but so we have so let's see, so for the small room or whatever, what most people are going to end up dealing with themselves. First of all, get the placement as close to the ideal placement as you possibly can, right? And then once you've done that, what's your next step? Almost every house in America that people are going to be dealing with, it's going to have what was an 8-foot ceiling, right? Almost without exception for the bedrooms. So that's a given. So
8 or maybe 10 if you're lucky, and sometimes 9. But yeah, like a lot. Usually it's, and that's so there's a few things. So, and then of course, if you also have an 8-foot width to your room, that is doubling. So that's having the same resonant frequencies as, so each dimension of the room, you've got the length and the width and the height. So for example, if you've got a 10 by 10 by 10 room, you're going to have some really, really difficult resonances to get rid of, because every single dimension is causing those resonances.
And if it was that crazy, would you actually target the frequency instead of making a broadband thing? So like, you're like, okay, I know exactly what's going on, right? You could kind of tune it maybe, or is that crazy?
Oh, because it's still going to be, I mean, there's some point where you might have to do that, but it's still going to be, it's not just going to be one frequency. It's going to be, I wonder, can I screencast to you with this or not?
I think you might be able to. You might actually, you might be able to. I'm not sure how this works exactly, but you might have a control panel where it says. Do you have a thing that shows your Google Hangout thing? I think on the left hand side of the screen, there's this thing that says screen share.
Oh, okay.
So that might actually do it.
Yep, I sure do. Let me see if there is on the Real Trap site. There were some links.
You had the mode calc thing on there.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could.
Yeah, I can actually pull that up if you want, and you can just tell me what numbers to hit it. Let me see.
Try that for a 10 by 10 by 10 room.
Okay, let's see. How do you? Where's the download, Ethan? Come on. Oh, right, buddy. Click the image to see the real size. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's see if this actually works. This is the nice part about OBS, is I can allegedly cannot.
Yeah, I gotta start playing with OBS.
Yeah, it was very frustrating for the longest time, but now they have this ASIO plugin for it, so it kind of like, man, almost every one of these broadcasts I've made, there's been a long rant about not being able to get audio from place to place. So I probably need to shut up about that for a bit. But here's let me know if you see this thing.
I can see it. Can you make it bigger or not?
Let's see. Yeah, let me see how this is. Oh, geez, yes, I can. That's about as big as I can get it, but that's normal size.
Yeah, I can see that from here. So
okay, so 10, and then what do you do? Put 10. So here's 10 by 10 by 10, and
so you see you have resonances there at each of these frequencies, and so those are the target. Those are going to be the target frequencies. It's not going to be the only thing, but now try switching one of those dimensions to 8 and another one to 12.
Okay, so let's see. So we'll say a 8-foot height because that's almost for sure. And so my room, for instance, this isn't quite what my size is, but let's see. So now they're not completely stacked on top of each other, right?
Right.
They're
Right. So in other words, so if you got to deal with those resonances for the height, you're going to put bass traps, broadband bass traps in the corners up to the yeah, in the horizontal corners around the room, or in the horizontal corners around the floor. But again, in a small room like that, who's got room to put that? So you're going to have to you're going to run into these. So then to deal with the resonance from the width and the length, you're going to put in the vertical corners. You're going to try to treat those. And then also, one thing I usually do in a real small room like that, you almost always need to put a bunch of broadband bass traps along the back wall behind the speakers, because in a small room, like, you're looking at 10 or 8 or 10 or 12 foot length, you're still pretty darn close to that wall, and you're going to be getting resonances right off that wall that are going to make your sound not flat. Are you hearing that? Somebody's messaging me here.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. I didn't know. I was looking for my phone. I'm like, wait, what's okay? But it's not me.
Hang on, I'll
and nobody's gonna die. They're getting what they're paying for. Oh, I'm not hearing you now.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything right now. Hang on.
Oh, I'm watching the wrong stream part. Sorry. Like, hey, he's talking. Okay, so so we got the speakers and the person placed in the right place, and then the next thing you're looking at is the floor to ceiling boundary corner, and then the wall to wall corners,
the wall.
Then,
the wall. Yeah, I mean, probably the first 4 things I would usually do is put in all 4 corners, at all 4 vertical wall to wall corners. That's probably going to be if you treat those corners, you're gonna notice an improvement. And basically, the more the more of these things you put in, the better off you're going to be for the most part.
Okay, so the corners, the 3-way corner, you always see people coming up with creative ideas for stuff in that one, because it, just thinking in your head, how do I make that shape for where the 3 walls, the 3 surfaces hit, right? I see different pictures, and I figure that's an important one, but even if you just bottom up to each other, it should work, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got an 8-foot ceiling, you put 2, because the 703 panels come in 2 foot or 2 by, I'm sorry, 2 foot by 4 foot panels.
Yep.
So stacking 2 of those traps, on top of each other, you're pretty much got that whole thing covered. The other thing people do is the super chunk thing, where they cut it into triangles and then stack the triangles all the way up. That's a lot more labor intensive, and it gives you all that more. I mean, that's a really effective trap for the corners.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I ever found a place that showed a measurement of doing the super chunk versus just putting the regular 703 up and then stuffing behind it with like pink fluffy or yellow fluffy fiberglass.
Yep, that's another way you can do it too. I've seen those measurements. I've forgotten. I mean, so much of acoustics, when you deal with Like if I have a client coming to me looking for acoustics treatment, there's three factors. They want it to look good, they want it to sound good, and they want it to be cheap.
Yeah.
So, you have to decide, you have to look into it and figure out what the budget is, what's what's going to be that, sometimes you just don't have, I've done things like I've taken a cardboard box and just filled it with old clothes or rags. That actually makes a really good bass trap, because it's got a membrane. Really, the cardboard becomes a membrane. So, and then you've got you can put fiberglass in there, fluffy, or rags. I mean, that's the thing. If you don't have access, for example, to 703 where you are, or you don't have a lot of money, you can still do a lot to help your acoustic situation, just by being a little savvy about it. So
I remember. Oops, I saw a video where a guy was taking towels and he was measuring, just packing a ton of towels into a panel. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. Hey,
Broski, what are you doing?
I'm on the air right now. Sorry. I saw a guy. He made a bass trap out of towels all stuck together, and I think they worked. He claimed, he showed measurements before and after, and it seemed to have worked pretty good.
Yeah, it probably did. It's again a situation where there's fibers. I mean, some of it. One of the reasons the fiberglass or rock wool is a good material is because it's not going to burn. So you got a lot of electrical stuff running around in your studio, and or if something happens, if you got a box full of towels or cloth, that's going to go up in flames quick. So there's definitely a downside to doing it that way, but so when I say this, I'm kind of, I say it with that caveat, there's, but as far as, dealing with some, if you got to deal with your acoustics, and it really is important. It's, we were talking earlier about how it's, people think, oh, I gotta buy these really expensive preamps, or I've got to have these expensive monitors, or I have to spend all this money on, these microphones or whatever. If you treat your acoustics, you will get exponentially more return in every way than spending that same amount of money in upgrading your equipment, cables, or microphones, or preamps. Especially now. I mean, just thinking about like these little Behringer interfaces and all of that stuff. They're inexpensive, but those preamps are really good for compared to what we used to have.
Oh yeah, I used to. It's infamous, the pictures where I'm standing in front of like piles and piles of really expensive mic preamps, and then just using whatever it happened to be on the interface at the time, because they work. I mean, I swear that right now it is more expensive for a company to make a bad sounding mic preamp than a decent one, because the stuff, it's just out there. You can just buy it from whoever. The chips are already made. The manufacturers are already doing it. It's like you'd have to tell them to stop what they're doing in order to tell them to make a really crappy. I mean, I'm sure there's different grades of good, but like I've got this Midas DL32 thing with the M32, and it's just, I bet you that and whatever, maybe nobody will ever do an album with me again. I bet you I wouldn't hear the difference if I changed that DL32 out for the Behringer's version, which is the S32. Supposedly it's the same circuit with just different quality of components or whatever. I bet you it wouldn't make a hill of beans difference. But
Well,
having
especially, and this is what, you know, gets back to what we're talking about, especially if you don't have your acoustics treated, because if you have your acoustics treated in a balanced way, you're going to have such a better sound to begin with. Whereas if you have, you know, I mean, the small rooms that most people deal with in their houses, all of them have at least, they have peaks and valleys of at least 30 decibels. At least. Every room that you run into is going to have that. And then that doesn't include also the decay times. When we measure this stuff, we measure the frequency response. So there's a graph, you know, and then we can get a waterfall plot that also shows us the decay times coming. So it's coming forward at us. I wish I had pulled up something here for the room EQ wizard. You know, I don't have any of that. I don't have any of those files, like the waterfall plots that I would use.
Yeah, that's something people really got to get, is that there's a time component to it too. Like you could have, you know, this frequency might ring really heavy, but this other one rings forever, you know, so you got to know that too. But that just comes down to that same thing of getting broadband absorption. So like everything is, you know, you're dealing with a lot of stuff at once, right? I mean,
right. Yeah, that's where that broadband absorption makes so much difference. You can just kind of catch all those frequencies. Now, some of them, the lower frequencies down, like we're seeing on this graph here, you've got things around 50 and 60 and 70 hertz. Some of those you're going to have to have a lot of mass, or you're going to have some kind of a targeted frequency, like a membrane absorber or something that's tuned to that frequency to you may have to, you know, if you really have a real bad problem, you might have to move into that, something like that. You know, but these small rooms, it's going to be really hard to get them. I mean, if you can get your frequency response within 10 dB or so of flat, you're doing really extremely well.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives you an idea too. You could have this microphone that's perfectly flat, and this you know, preamp that's straight wire, you know, the legendary, you know, or whatever, the mythical straight wire, you know, preamp that's clean and noiseless. But if you're dealing with a frequency response that's, you know, has peaks and valleys of 30 dB, then that's what you're going to have. So it doesn't make sense to have this to spend all this money getting this perfectly flat, clean preamp if your acoustics aren't there. It takes some people a while to get that until they hear it. You know, when you walk into a room that's really nicely acoustically treated, you hear it. It sounds different just when you're, like, for example, the person that you're talking to somebody, or they're next to them, you hear their voice in a very clear way, you know. I had a guy, he was a Grammy nominated producer, did some stuff with some big name hip hop guys, and I won't mention any names, but I went into his studio. This was in New York, and he was somebody who was, he just kind of had this, he took a pride in having sort of a rough and ready ghetto way of doing things. And he said, yeah, I'm used to working in all kinds of crap rooms, and I think this room is pretty good. I think there's a few things that that could improve, but but I'd like to see what we can do. And when I went in there, he was in a session, and his vocal booth, he had a small vocal booth. He didn't have any treatment in there. And so he was recording vocals at the time, and I could just hear all kinds of resonances in the room and stuff. And I said, oh, okay, yep. And he left, went out of the country for a while, and I treated his studio while he was gone. And then he came back, and I get this email from him. He's like, oh my God, I can't even believe this. It sounds so much better in here. I have a CD full of songs that I've been shopping to labels, and I'm remixing them all because now I'm hearing things that I never heard before. And so, he's like, I'm never gonna, do without this again, because and that's the thing too, is when if you got a small project studio and you're recording all your stuff in the same room you're mixing in, that investment in the acoustics it's improving everything on the way in and everything on the way out. So it's like, really, it's like you get double your investment, And so if you are, I know this because you've been doing this for a long time and treating studios kind of on a
pretty guerrilla
way. Huh?
It's usually pretty guerrilla with extreme ghetto technology.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but when I mean, even spending a few $100s, it's you get so much back. You get more than if you were spending, $1,000 or maybe even $10,000 in, you'll get more benefit from dealing with the acoustics than you will in spending all that money on your electronics.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody who remembers when we had Studio Z with Jimmy, we had every mic preamp that anybody had ever heard of, every flavor. We had piles and piles of them, but the studio was this 18-foot by 18-foot garage thing that it was cut down diagonally from one corner to another corner. So you ended up with two triangle-shaped rooms that weren't very big, one for the control room and one for the tracking room. And all those, even like, what is it, Behringer 88K or something, if I had those in a good room compared to all our best mic pre's and microphones and all that fancy stuff in that tiny horrible triangle room, like, it's just hard to get sounds out of it, but
yeah,
it's crazy because the customers, they see the mic preamps, they're like, oh, this must sound good, everything's fine, and you're looking at this room, you're like, this is not good, but it worked out for the rap vocals and stuff just fine, but
right, yeah,
but it's rough with the drums. So we have okay, so let's see, where are we had put your stuff in the right place, get some broadband low whatever traps across the corners of the room, and then your speakers themselves, let's say these walls are just plain untreated, the speakers are they're gonna smear the walls around the room though, aren't they? Like,
yes. So and once again, actually, I should probably just recommend people go to the Real Trap site, because he's got so much great information on there. And the thing about the 38% rule is on there, and it shows you how to how to set up your speakers, how to set up your room, where to put those things in the corners. And then also you have the early reflection points. So when you have, you've got this sound that's coming out of your speakers, and it's kind of going all directions, and off to the sides you have a place where that first reflection hits, and it can then come back to your ears from the side walls. And so you basically need to find that place, and usually you use a mirror So you usually need some help with this. You sit at your mix position, and then you have somebody take a mirror and put it along the sidewall, and wherever you see your tweeter along that sidewall, that is an area that needs at least high frequency absorption. Again, I always recommend broadband absorption in small rooms because the more bass trapping you can get, the better. But that's where something, if you had a couple pieces of foam, studio foam or something, that would be a good place. And also the same thing on the ceiling above you, there's that first reflection point. And if you can treat that, that will help. And then you'll start to get better imaging, because then when you get all these reflections coming off it skews your frequency response, but it also skews the time-based information that's coming to your ears, so you can hear the sound stage, the width and the depth of the sound stage, and where each instrument is placed in that sound stage. So then also at the back of the room, the back wall behind, you can see that I don't have any treatment there. I do have my studio monitors up here, and that is part of the plan in the not too distant future to put a trap back there. But that's another place. And one of the we were talking about diffusers. One of the classic things that gets done in a studio is they'll put diffusers on the back wall. Now, to deal with those reflections from back there. The problem with that is, I mean, if you've got a multi-million-dollar studio and a huge control room, and the wall behind you is, 20 feet or more back, then it might make sense to use diffusers instead of absorption. But if it's closer than 15 feet, what happens is then if the sound goes back and it hits the diffusers and it kicks it back in all different directions, and it confuses the time-based information that you're getting from the speakers that gives you that sound stage. So anytime you're like 10-15 feet, within 10-15 feet of diffusers, you will hear comb filtering off the diffusers. So that's why for small rooms, I just don't recommend using diffusion, especially in any place that's like a first reflection point or any of that kind of stuff. It might be okay to use it on the ceiling somewhere where it's not, that you're not getting reflections that are going to interfere with any of the time-based information. But even so, in a small room, you might as well just use a broadband absorber, because you need more bass trapping. That's just all there is to it. You always, in a small room, usually you can't really get enough bass trapping in a small room to really make it great. So it's sort of a waste to use diffusers in small rooms.
So if we were doing that mirror trick, and on the wall where I could see the tweeter, I put 703 or the Safe and Sound or whatever at that spot instead of foam. I'm not hurting anything, right? I'm absorbing some of the high end, and I'm definitely, hopefully, going to take even more bass junk out of the room, right?
Yep. And that's a thing too, just to get the idea of, oh shoot, well, if I put, can I put too much bass trapping in my small room? The answer is probably not. And you're not going to lose bass by absorbing it. You're actually going to gain bass. You're going to gain a stronger, more accurate, more powerful bass, because a lot of these there's a lot of places where bass frequencies are canceling each other out in a big room or in a small room like that. So you're actually in those areas, if you're eliminating the reflection, or at least knocking it down enough, you're actually going to you're going to bring those frequencies up because you're no longer canceling them out. So it always will make the bass sound better. I think there's sometimes I've heard people say, well, geez, can I put too much in? If I put too much in, will it mean that I have less bass? No, it'll actually mean you'll have more perceived bass in a good way, rather than woo, 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 woo,
Yeah. For instance, my isolation booth that has been the bane of my existence for the last year or so. It was supposed to be a week or so project, and it ended up going crazy. But inside there, normally you just put foam in there and stuff, but I had plenty of this stuff, so I coated the entire inside with that 3-inch safe and sound, and then we put some burlap over it, so it may not absorb the super highs as well as the foam would, but man, I was looking at the inside dimensions of that room, and I could just hear, like, when you're talking, you just hear that honking, and I'm like, oh man, I just want to put some bass traps in here, and now, I mean, it sounds good. It really sounds good in there.
Well, and absolutely, and that's another thing. A lot of people think, oh, I need a vocal booth. If you've got a small project studio, the only reason you need a vocal booth is if you are in a position where you need isolation.
Yep.
Otherwise, it is best to record your vocals out in the open room, because when you put somebody in a tiny room, let's punch in, like, try to do a closet. Let's look at what happens when you put somebody in a, let's say, 4x5 by 6 room.
Okay.
So you're gonna have resonances at 90 hertz, 100 hertz, 100, and what's that, like 140, around 200. I mean, think about what that's gonna do to your voice.
Yeah, and some of these are awful close together too.
Yes. So in all of those things, I mean, then that was the one thing, like when I was talking about the guy that I went, he was doing a vocal tracking session for a hip hop thing, and he had that vocal booth, and really what he needed to be doing was, if he wanted the better sound, he just needed to have him right in the control room with him. But because this is the way we think, because we've seen this in all of the, on TV and in the movies, and whatever, that's what you do. When you go in the studio, you cut the vocals in the vocal booth. Well, oh yeah, that's a great example there. 6x6 or
so I've got matching dimensions on some of them, so it's it's a little bit scary,
Yeah, so you're going to have all kinds of weirdness going on there, and it's going to sound terrible, and that's what goes into your mic.
Yep.
So
but you want that 3 inches of that stuff all around the room made just an amazing difference. Like the honk, like you could hear the honking when you're talking in there, and now I got people yelling in there, and I don't hear any honking.
Right. Yep. I remember you were talking about that, and I remember saying something about that. Just go ahead and put all that in there. Put bass trapping. Absolutely, put bass trapping. If you have a small vocal booth, you have to have it. You need it. It's not. Yeah. I mean, people think, oh, I can just put foam in there and we'll be good, but no. You need broadband. The smaller the room, the more you need broadband trapping, really.
Yeah, and I've never swept that little room or whatever, but even though there's not foam and it's just got that rock wool stuff, we're not hearing the high frequency reflections or anything. I'm not, there might be some coming off the burlap or something, but I'm not hearing anything like, the stuff that you actually do hear foam fix. Well, I'm not hearing any of those problems. That stuff is absorbent too, I think.
It absolutely is. And I mean, that's what it's for. And it's, I mean, really, it's better than foam. you know, the funny thing about foam is, you know, one of the first things we see people identify as studio foam. Oh, it has that, you know,
the shape,
the shapes, the peaks and valleys in it.
Yeah.
But really, you'd actually be better off with just straight foam. That, you know, obviously it has to be open cell foam. You can't use closed cell foam like is what they use for the cushion in your couch. But but yeah, you're better off actually not having that, because you get an even absorption across the spectrum, a much more even absorption. Whereas you're only getting, you know, where that foam gets really thin, you don't have very much absorption there. So it's kind of a weird design, really. That's why honestly the you know, the fiberglass, the dense fiberglass it's going to perform better across the board. I think people get real caught up in foam because it's what people see, you know.
Yeah, we were having people telling us that, you know, for years, you know, that you know, foam versus fiberglass. Well, yeah, sure, the fiberglass works some for the low end, but it turns into a mirror and sounds like an echo chamber on the high end. I'm like, I've never had that happen to me.
Yeah, that's not true at all. I mean, that's the measurements that are done on that stuff would show that that's not true. Yeah, I feel so unprepared. I now kind of wish I had a bunch of graphs that I could, you know, punch up here, but.
I think people will get it, but so now let's see where we are in the summary chart. So put your speakers and you in the right place. Get the corners trapped off as best you can, and there's not too much that you can do in the corners. You can just keep putting it on there, and then the mirror trick, right?
Right.
Get some absorption wherever you can see on the wall, and you know, one of the hard things for me is, like, I've got tons of that safe and sound. I got bags full of it right now, and I could stick it all over my walls, but, you know, making the frames and stuff, it's a little bit tricky. Like the ones we made out in that big drum room, those weren't too bad. But I don't know that, let me get a picture. I don't know that I want to, I mean, I've got so many bags of it. I'd love to just stick it across all the walls and just be done with it, and then somehow to cover it up. But, you know, I'm always looking for ways of how people frame this stuff up, and it's one of those things you should be able to Google for and get tons out of it, but you really don't, you know. So I don't know if I just have to make panels again.
Yeah, you know, there was one time we were going to add some more as our studio was growing. We had a big, huge open living room. Then we had a control room that was a separate room. It was a commercial building, so we had two rooms that were big enough. Our control room was actually big enough. I rehearsed a whole 16-piece Afrobeat band in our control room.
Wow.
So it was a nice big room. So we had to keep adding more bass traps. So we found a place that was selling the Johns Manville version of the 703 locally, and they gave us a good price on it. And then we went to Menards, and there were like shelf frames. They were wooden shelf frames made of like 1x1s. So, and they were the dimension of the shelf frame was 2 feet by 4 feet.
Oh, wow.
Imagine, so you've got, you know, a 2 feet by 4 feet rectangular frame, and then a bar that went across the middle, all made, and it was all pre-made. And so all we did was took the 703 panels, slapped them on there, and wrapped some fabric around it, and took a staple gun and we were good to go. Put some eye screws and some picture hanging wire, and we were there.
Oh yeah, so that's pretty much how all these are made right here. But we made the 1x1 frame ourselves, but it wasn't hard. It's just man, I just want to glue this junk to the wall and then cover it with something. And I don't know. I'll probably end up making these same panels again. It was easy enough. Plus, you can take them with you if you have to leave. So that's nice too.
Yep. And it's cool to have some, it's cool to have some open wall space if you've got a good sized room. I mean, we talked about the way I had my studio live and dead end. Yeah. That can be really nice if you've got a good size, a big room, bigger than 20 feet, dimensions or whatever.
Yeah, mine is about 20 by 25 by 12 is
right. Yeah, so if you've got, if you could leave one end of that more resonant, and then you may have some, throw some room mics in there, and you've got them at a decent, I mean, it's good to have them at the right distance, so there's a good phase relationship there. But if you have that, you may be able to get a little bit of natural reverb there and not have to use a reverb.
Yeah, I have a PZM on the opposite wall from where the drums are, kind of like if you're looking at this picture, pretty much where you're standing.
Oh,
and,
right.
It's just far enough that it actually adds, so you can actually get some cool stuff out of it and do all the tricks, like either opening the room mics with the snare trigger, or just crushing it and turning it up like it's not really a reverb. It's not that long, but it's just far enough away where it kind of does some cool stuff.
Yeah, it gives you some sense of space in the room. Right. So yeah, so that's like drums at one end, get as much absorption on that end as you can. Or whatever instruments you're recording on that particular end, and then you can do less if you want to have. I mean, again, if you're dealing with small rooms, smaller than what we're talking about with the 20 by 25 or whatever, I think you maybe don't want to do live and dead end. You just want to get as much absorption in there as you can.
The bummer for me here is that the powers that be would rather have it look good than sound good. And so before I put all these little pieces up, I just went down to the hardware store and bought a bunch of packing blankets and was kind of draping them over, away from the wall, but over everything. And it was sounding fine. I mean, I was perfectly happy with it. It could have been, it's a lot better now, but I would have been okay with those packing blankets. I don't know, what the theory is behind that, but it just, at least all the bouncing and feedback and junk went away. But if I had my way, I would cover that entire, you see, there's kind of like a framed in section where the drums are. There's a beam, and then that whole entire wall, the sides right there, and the ceiling right there, I would cover the entire thing, and I think I would be even happier. I am really happy right now, though. But I bet you it would be better, like if that whole chunk over there was just one big absorber,
Yeah, if you could really, if you could get just up to the height of, I can't point on your screen, can I?
Yeah, no.
So like, maybe, so you got the yellow and red multicolored one back there. So if you had a bunch of those that were going up to about that height, about halfway in the middle of that, if you had them to that height, all the way across for the width of those drums, that would make a huge difference.
No,
I think that would be really worth doing. Or if you can, I see you got the blue one down there. If you could just kind of bring those.
Yeah, I've actually got a bunch left that are already built that I could stick back there. I'm not sure how much I can get away with looks wise with these guys, but
either that or maybe build some on floor standing frames that you can just put back there, and you can move them out of the way, and you can use them for use them like gobos too. I always had a few of those around, a few on frames, on feet that I could move around.
Yeah, I wonder how much I could get. I wonder how much I could get away with, and I wonder how much they'd even notice now that they're so used to seeing it this way. Like I could probably slap a couple more on there and not get yelled at. I guess I could try that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do think it would make a lot of difference.
Wow. Yeah, and as happy as I am right now, if it was even a little bit better, that would be cool.
Yeah, you'll be doing probably less EQ.
Yeah, the main thing is before I put any of that up, it was so smeary kind of. I don't even know how to say that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was awful.
And the weird thing is that even after we put a lot of this stuff up, I could still find flutter echoes with the drumsticks, and I mean, like, you don't think, you're like, oh man, that's tiny, nobody's ever going to hear it. But when you get into that frequency, it's amazingly loud. Like it was happening with the snare, like on rim shots and stuff. And but you could actually have somebody click it, and you could follow to where exactly that sound was coming from. And I'll just put another panel right there, and all of a sudden it's gone. It's that flutter echo is weird stuff. Like it's like it borrows energy from the entire universe and is way louder and way longer than anything has a right to be. And it's in such a specific spot too. Like you really, you could move around the room and not have it. And then you get in the right spot and there it is, man. It was just crazy. And it wasn't like directly above the drums or anything. It's like some of them were kind of far away. It was really a weird. Like I remember Ethan had a video where this is more about bass stuff, but he was taking balloons around the room and he would write in what peak or null it was, and they were like right next to each other, the peak and the null. Like you move your head, like everybody's like, oh, right here at mix position is perfect, but no, you move your head an inch in mix position, and it was a totally different room.
Yeah. Yep. I had another situation too where I had a studio that I actually had advised him on the acoustics, but he had in between his monitors he had a big huge TV, as his main mixing monitor. It was probably 55 inches or something. And he had the way he had the monitors, they were towed in. And so what was happening was he was getting an early reflection point right off his monitor. And it was causing so much comb filtering. Like you'd move just an inch either way, and you'd like, we were trying to master something at one point that was kind of there had been some mistakes with the tracking, or what happened was something, I think his hard drive failed and he lost the master tracks and he had only the rough mixes. So we were trying to fix some things, mastering the 2-track, and it was a nightmare because every time you'd move an inch or two or a couple of inches, it sounded completely different, and it was all due to that comb filtering. And it's the same thing at different frequencies. Like you might have certain frequencies that are being affected by those higher frequency echoes off that back wall for like the floor tom, and it's going to be affected a little bit differently for the rack tom. So you may be having a hard time getting a really good even sound for all of them, even though if they're tuned well, you're still getting a different comb filtering for each of those drums because they're at a different relationship to the wall.
Yeah. So,
again, why behind drums, it's just, it's like really critical. If you're anywhere close to the wall, it's really critical to have a, good broadband bass trapping back there. And that's again why I say that too. If you're in a small room where you can't get those speakers out from the wall a little bit, you really need some broadband bass trapping right directly behind the speakers. And behind your whole mix desk there.
Yeah, I actually need to build myself a more handy utilitarian function. Like I don't actually use this mixer. Like, so my last mixer that I had was it's like a Trident, I think it was a Series 24 or whatever. And I think we got rid of that in 2005. And after that, I never wanted to see another mixer as long as I lived. You know, we'd gone fully onto the computer. And so now I have this giant mixer because I mean, it's really cool. The guys donated this stuff, but you know, it's like all I want is the Behringer the rack thing. You know, I'll just throw it in my rack. You know, I don't need. So now I got this giant mixer. I've got to build some kind of desk that holds that and holds a couple pieces of rack gear and holds up the monitors. But I mean, the way I have it right now is I don't know if I even have a picture, but yeah, it's not ideal. So I guess I could fill the whole wall behind the thing with that Safe and Sound anyway. That's the one we can get in Hawaii. It's really hard to get the Knopf or the Owens Corning stuff here.
Right. Yeah, whatever you can get, but yeah, that would help. You know, that's another thing when you're dealing with a mixer. And we had that also in our studio, where when we had a Crest Audio mixer, good size one, and then we had the monitors put above there, but then what was happening is we were getting all kinds of comb filtering off the mixer, and that's often the case in a studio.
No.
Which is why it's nice if you get in a bigger studio where you got monitors mounted into the wall and all of that stuff, and they're way up from the mixer. But if you got your monitors, like so many studios that have good sized mixing desks, they put the monitor on the thing, you're still dealing with comb filtering off of that mixing desk. And so what we ended up doing in that situation, again, we had plenty of room, so we put the monitors back a ways further from the mixer, and we put them up on stands, and that helped with not getting the direct comb filtering right off the tweeters, right off of the mixing desk there. But again, most people don't have that. And another solution, because this studio that I'm talking about was one of my partners in that thing, where I helped him design the acoustics, and he's still kind of struggling in that control room, because he wants certain things in certain ways, but he's running into all these weird comb filtering issues. So one of the things he originally did with that desk is he just got it off to the side, because he didn't have room to have it, like we had it on our big control room. So, yeah, he ended up just putting it off to the side and using it basically as a whole mess of channel strips. I mean, he was doing most of the mixing in the box anyway, so it was really just for the preamps and maybe some EQ going in if we needed it.
Yeah, mine is just because it has the USB audio interface or the Dante interface or whatever I'm using at the time.
Right.
And yeah, it's just sitting there. Like I just don't use this, mixers anymore. So now I got this giant thing that's taking up a bunch of space, and I really, it's so cool to have it, but man, I'm really looking at, I think a lot of this network audio stuff is the future. So I really think pretty sooner rather than later, I'm probably going to take this thing out of here and put an X32 rack in its place. But I mean,
yeah, you probably, cool. Yeah. I mean, if you have at least, yeah, I mean, because at that point, if you're just using it as an audio interface and as for preamps, I mean,
no, the preamps are in the they're out in the room, the DL32. So I'm not I'm not using it for.
Oh, okay.
I'm not at first, I was doing a couple of videos where, this guy had made this interface for the X32s and Reaper. So I was using it to do all these cool moving faders. And, if you got really dumb clients, that kind of stuff, I don't get myself into trouble, but it impresses them. And they're like,
Right.
oh yeah, cool. So it makes it like they really have to have it. They're so, boy, that's so awesome, but yeah. Let me see if I can actually, we'll see if I can put this on the screen real quick. Actually, let me see. Yeah, so I'm really trying to figure out how to use OBS here. Add new. Let me see if I can find this. Oh man, why is this sideways? Jesus. Okay, I wonder if I can rotate this somehow. So I'm not sure if this is showing up on it. Is the screen getting all goofy right now?
Yeah, I'm seeing something.
I'm trying to shrink it down.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm starting to see it. Oh, okay. I can see it for the side.
But it's sideways. Why is it sideways? How do you can I rotate this thing? Oh, yep, rotate 90. There we go. Okay, let me see if I can wow. Okay. Let me see if I can make this make sense. So this big this banner Focusrite sent, I made a frame for it, and I stuffed the inside of it with all the extra soft fiberglass I had. So that's straddling the ceiling and the wall back there. And then there's a chunk, a black thing, chunk of 703 in like a muslin bag.
Mm-hmm.
But see this giant mixer, like I
Right,
love it, but I don't need it. It's just
he actually has that same Midas mixer. My friend does, and it's the same. It's the same thing. And we were talking about that a little bit too. I was like, yeah, you're getting some comfort filtering off of that too.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Is like when you get into a room that's really set up right. I'm sure you've been in some really well set up rooms.
Yeah, vintage, we had an Augsburger control room, so that you're spoiled for life.
Right. Yeah. But you can get a lot closer to that than you might think if but you have to pay attention to all these little things like comb filtering. You're getting comb filtering off a desk. You're getting comb filtering off a mixer like that. I mean, just where those speakers are, having some 703 behind those speakers would be really helpful.
Yeah, I could actually cover that whole wall. I've got way more than enough stuff to do, but I need to build myself some proper stands and stuff. Like everything is just like on a table, and it's just terrible. Like I made the overbridge for the monitors and the speakers out of some 8-foot chunk of wood I got from the hardware store. Like this is some guerrilla stuff, man.
Yeah. Do you have could you set that room up so that your mix position is at the 38%?
I probably could. Yeah, it depends. Like if I built this this room out the right way, where I could put most of the stuff that I actually need to get to behind the mixer, all the stuff drawers and things that I get to from time to time, which is definitely possible. I could move this whole thing back quite a ways.
Because one of the things, like I was saying before, that we did on our control room to avoid getting the comb filtering off the mixer was to put the speakers back and move the mixer to our close to where we were at that 38% place, but then the speakers were up on stands further back toward the wall, not right close to the wall, but further back toward it. And I'll tell you what, we were talking about concrete and low resonant frequencies. One of my favorite speaker stands some of those cement breeze blocks and stack them up.
Oh.
Those will make a great speaker stand because they're not going to move on you. You know, they're not going to resonate. The resonant frequency of those breeze blocks is going to be below what you're putting out of your monitors. And you know, if you set your speakers on something that is not super stable, you may get some smearing then, because you know, when the bass drum hits, you get that vibration of the speaker cabinet, and that can move the tweeters ever so slightly. So you can, you know, if you set, you know, I see sometimes there's, you know, you go to Guitar Center or Banjo Center or whatever, and you know, get their metal speaker stands that are like a pipe and a platform, and they're not very expensive, but those things are going to move a little bit, you know, they're going to resonate a little bit and move, and so you end up smearing some of your high frequencies and some of that time-based stuff, transients that give you the clear imaging.
So you're saying like you would actually just take like what they call cinder blocks or whatever and
yeah,
put those up?
Yeah, the same bricks, those big breeze blocks that back wall is made out of in your studio there. So just get some of those, you know, go to Home Depot or wherever and get some of those, or even like you might even be able to find those at a building salvage place, you know. Just get some of those and stack them up to the height you want. I mean, if you want to, you know, maybe use some construction adhesive or something to, you know, glue them together so somebody doesn't walk into it and knock them akimbo or something. But I mean, we didn't do that, but that's actually what we used in our studio. We had they were just the Mackie, you know, the Mackie monitors, and we put those on a couple of stacks of breeze blocks, and worked great. And we put I think we wrapped it in some black fabric or something, so it looked all sexy.
Oh yeah, that's true. You could just wrap them up. Nobody would see that they're bricks. I got to think of something like, if I keep this mixer, like I should just get a case for this thing and actually use it for what it's for, which is an awesome live console. Just put an X32 rack in here and be done with it. Because then I really don't. I could put just a pair of speaker stands out in the middle of the room. Like I really don't use this stuff. I feel so bad because it really is a cool piece, and it's capable of doing so many cool things, and I'm not using it for it at all. Like, it has all these onboard effects, like good stuff too. And,
I know.
And I'm not using any of it. Like, I had Ed Rye on, who he uses these things live, you know, every night, or he uses the X32 or the Midas version, whatever. And he's like, he uses it for recording, and he has a you know, perfectly good zero latency setup with all the onboard effects. And I don't know if you heard my other one about how I don't like to differentiate between tracking and mixing, so I wouldn't really do it that way. But it is cool how you can use these things, and I really need to. I got to think of something, but I may just end up making a real cool looking desk thing out of it and put racks in and speaker stands of some sort. You know, who knows?
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, you can make a couple of racks with any of it. Do you have some outboard effects that you're using, or?
I don't anymore, but I keep thinking, you know, in here I want a set of like even better mic preamps than these. I don't know that there's, you know, this is me, you know, like I'm so skeptical of stuff, but and I don't know that these Midas mic preamps aren't perfect, but I kind of just want a rack with a couple of my old mic preamps in it, just because. But you know, who knows if I really need to do that or not. I mean, ideally, I just have some speakers, a keyboard and mouse, and some video monitors in the room, and that's it. You know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's getting that way, really. I mean, and you eliminate some funny acoustics issues if you get rid of that desk.
Yeah, and it's not like, you know, I don't need to audition for anybody here in person. You know, like I know that they're always telling me, oh yeah, if you had this mixer in there and you had some cool looking mic preamps and stuff, then you'd get a whole bunch of customers who aren't going to pay anything anyway. And I'm like, you know, I don't really need that.
Right. Yeah.
I get what I get because of what I do. You know, judge me by the sound coming out of the speakers, not by
Right.
what
Exactly.
noise or what color socks I'm wearing or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'd get that too. It's like, you know, do you have a Neve? Do you have a U87? You know, and it's like, well, no, we actually don't. But you know what? We actually have, you know, an acoustically beautiful setup in the room.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can make really, really great sounding recordings here. So, you know, yeah. But I know people get hung up on that stuff.
Yeah. I just say form follows function, man. I'm just not interested in, I'm really not interested in the look side, but you know, I was just doing in actually the first really big thing we did in that ISO booth was doing an audio book a couple weeks ago. And, that's what I was thinking. I want to put one mic preamp in here that's even lower noise, but I don't know that these Midases are even noisy, you know, like it seems. I was looking at the guys who actually measure stuff and their specs, and it was pretty close to the claimed noise levels of some of the really known to be not noisy mic preamps, you know.
So
like,
is it preamp noise that you're getting, or is it airflow, or is it, I mean, what's the noise floor in your studio?
In this case, I mean, I was hearing preamp noise because I had to turn up the preamp so much, and like there's a certain sound. Like if you unplug the mics and you just turn up the mic preamps, you'll hear this certain type of sound. Like it, and I swear every mic preamp, it almost sounds like the same ish kind of sound. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but if you don't plug a mic in and you just crank the mic preamp and just listen to what you're hearing, that's what I was hearing, because this person was speaking so quietly, and you know I just I just had to crank it, and so who knows.
What would happen if you stacked a couple of preamps and just
yeah, we were having a discussion about this on one of these episodes, like with, you know, these cloud lifters and things like that. Like, is there a spot, like, do these mic preamps go so non-linear with regards to the noise that as they get in the last quarter of their usable turning range, does the noise get that much louder where you actually would be better to put another mic preamp in front of it, you know? So who knows?
Yeah, I'd be interested in your findings on that.
Yeah, I'm ordering a cloud lifter to just see, like, what, you know, I'll actually test, like, how much is it actually less noisy, you know, to use this thing than to just turn the mic preamp up, and we'll see. It might turn out that these Midas mic pre's are actually pretty good. So who knows?
Do you have any outboard pre's there?
Not. Let's see. What do I have? I do have a couple up in the loft upstairs. I never put them on, but I mean the ones that are sitting here, I think there's like one of those art tube ones that surprisingly did so well in all those shootouts, but I don't know that they're low noise. And I have a bunch of those Joe Meek 3Q mic preamps, but all the really good mic preamps that my cousin has, like all my good ones, those are with Jimmy. They're still in Arizona. He's, you know, I don't know what he's doing with them, but we do have, there's a 9098, what was the other mic? There's a 737, which we had one at Jimmy's too, and I don't remember those things being low noise at all. The Avalon 737, that you would just have it there because the rappers expected to see it.
Right.
But I think I remember those things being noisy. But the 9098 should be pretty quiet. So yeah, I don't know. I'll try plugging it in and testing against that Midas. But what I really want to find out is if that cloud lifter is anything but nonsense. I do know that there's plenty of mic preamps out there that just won't turn up enough, and so in that case, I bet you of course the cloud lifter is going to help, or probably.
Right.
You know, who knows? But
yeah, I would think.
But it'll be a good test to do.
Yeah, well, let me know. I'll be interested to see what what comes out of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Now
should do that here too, because I've got like some rain preamps and stuff. I should play around with that and going into because I've got a the Behringer interface sitting here. At some point, I got to get my my old computer with I've got the EMU interface. I really want to use the sampler in that. But I need to redo it's a Windows 7, and I have some drivers. I think the last drivers were like, seems like that was like an XP era interface almost. But I think they had some drivers that would work with, like right toward the end, I got some from somebody that worked there that would work on Windows 7.
Oh, wow.
So I need to rebuild my Windows 7 machine and see if I can get that up and running. It would be nice to have all those sounds to be composing with again.
That's crazy. Like, just to think that you need to have some ancient computer in order to run certain things. But I remember it was happening before too. There's like some software that won't run on the newer computers, and people are like, no, I got to have this ancient computer here. So
yeah, that was really an unfortunate thing about that interface, because it was such a great interface, but the design of it and everything was just really difficult. I remember Justin Franco went to them to talk to them about it because we were running into problems within Reaper, I think. And so he had to try to figure out how their drivers were working or something.
Oh, wow.
So there were some technical issues that it took, I think, working with them a little bit to figure out, which was amazing that he did that. Yeah,
Justin is just an absolutely amazing person. Like, it's intimidating to be around him in real life. It's really a trip. I mean, not that he's really mellow and low key, but it's just that the stuff that he's capable of doing. It's like, holy crap, man! Just make him president and solve all the world's problems in 2 seconds. You know, I mean,
right? Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that we have Reaper, because I I just like that whole model of operating.
Yeah, I mean, even in the very earliest days, like the second that it could actually record and playback audio, I was using. I kept saying, no, this is my test thing. I'll still be using Vegas, but no, honestly, the second it recorded, I was just using it, and it just went. That was crazy.
I started pretty early too, because I was still messing with older Cubase, like Cubase VST, I think, at the time, and I just remember, it was pre-Nuendo, pre-Yamaha, really, and Steinberg was pissing everybody off with their hardware and with their software, and I remember.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess, when I was a moderator at Sound on Sound, and then I started really pushing for it there, and now they love it over there.
Yeah, and even early on, I think they were really cool about stuff, and then there's one guy that I was fighting. I'm so mellow now, but everybody remembers I used to be I'm sure I still do, but man, a lot of people hated me because I was speak my mind, and I remember the guy had just said something dumb about Reaper in the SOS forum, and I think, did he ban me? It's so funny to think about back then, because nowadays Sound on Sound and even most of the time back then, they were just so supportive of Reaper, and it was pretty much, in the early days, we didn't understand. We were too naive, why isn't Reaper getting reviewed? Because all kinds of stuff gets reviewed, and it turned out that no, you're supposed to pay for reviews.
And they really were always. They had a really very strong integrity about that. That's what I always loved about them. They were very, very carefully guarding their independence.
Yeah.
And they really, they would review something, and if there was something wrong with it, they wouldn't just hide it. They'd go back to the manufacturer and say, hey, we found this and this and this wrong. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to hold off on the review? Do you want to fix it? And then we'll review it when you fix it, or what do you know? And there were a lot of things that either got fixed early on because of their reviews, that might not have otherwise been fixed. And there were times when even some products ended up not coming to market because when they did the review, they found issues, and then the company maybe wasn't able to fix it, or didn't, or maybe it wasn't cost effective for them to fix it, and maybe they just went back to the drawing board, you know.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's a thing that people got to realize when these guys do these crap reviews. Not only, I mean, I took a bunch of people to task over how they gave a couple Line 6 products some seriously that just were not actually targeted the way that even the article was saying they were targeted. There's some really ridiculous things, and when you do this fake puffed up review, you're not even helping the company that you're doing the review for, because you're encouraging them to do stupid things, and you know eventually the customers will find out, and they're gonna flame them. And you know, right. That's what was really good about Sound on Sound, is that by them reviewing Reaper, they kind of forced the other companies to have to review Reaper for free, and because otherwise they were going to look like, you know, they're out of touch or whatever, you know. And right. it was pretty funny, because once Sound on Sound went, the next couple months everybody was reviewing Reaper, and it's like, but you know what, you're too late. You know, we'd offered you, you know, we tried to get you to talk about it before, and now, you know, I think our Reaper community, I mean, there's a lot of crazies in there, but they're still probably among the most skeptical forum that you'll run into. And I think it's a lot because those early days set the tone when people were playing real.
And the whole ethos of Kakos, of what Justin's doing there, and you know, just the stand of, we don't have to go through this whole, you know, Uber commercial rigmarole. We're just going to do it, and we're going to do it right, and you know, be responsive. And you know, I mean, just what happened recently, I think, with somebody wrote a thing about what was wrong with the compressor, and and he fixed it. I mean, that just you know, that's the kind of response that we need, and we weren't having that. And I think he really challenged the other DAW manufacturers to really step some things up too, because I saw a lot of things happening after that. They were like, oh, well, we better put this in, you know, where they were dragging their feet before, you know.
Yeah. And so, you know, I'm hoping, like earlier today I did a YouTube video about you know, comparing like real-time CPU use and stuff like that on different amp sims, you know. And so I'm always checking these things. Like Justin, you know, there was a problem in another plugin that was related to the what I was seeing in these guitar things, and Justin and Schwa, I think, told the guys what they needed to do to fix it. And it's just unreal, because if they listen, you know, you win, everybody wins, you know. So listen. You know? So hopefully the companies will listen to the video I put up, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'll tell you, it's amazing just how different the way Justin was doing things was, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, our community they can be brutal, you know, but in general they respond well to, you know, everybody says, oh no, here comes the fanboys, they're going to get all mad that this guy was horrible about the compressor. And we're like, no, we just learned something. We're all happy about it. Who's mad, you know? Nobody's mad. We're glad he pointed it out.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I do think that, you know, I think once Sound on Sound grabbed onto it, I think it was, I think that was really helpful all around. And their whole thing too was always, you know, to really trying to empower, you know, people who were doing their stuff at home. And you know,
and you know, I think it went both ways too, because I didn't really know what Sound on Sound was before that. And except for okay, oh man, okay, this is the worst thing Sound on Sound ever did, and they need to repent for the rest of the universe. There was this thread. I don't know if you saw it or remember it. It was this RB Studio thread. This guy came in and came to Sound on Sound forums, and there was this guy who was selling like these rebadged Behringer products called Zytar, and like he would actually just put the Zytar sticker on a Behringer mixer and some hard disk recorders of some sort. And this guy had come into the Sound on Sound forums and asked about, does anybody know this gear? And everybody said, wait, no, don't buy that. That's rebadged Behringer junk. And the guy just didn't want to listen. And he just told everybody that, no, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to open the studio. I'm going to spend all my money. And he built the studio.
I remember that thread.
Studio. Yeah. So, and then, a couple of the predicted end, a couple months later was I'm selling all this studio and it's going out of business. And everybody felt bad for him. But that thread was like a warning. Hey, listen, man, like use the logical fallacies, use your common sense skepticism, your basic reason and critical thinking, because that thread was the ultimate warning. And I think they took it off. Like it's not there anymore. And like, oh, it's such a bummer. So I'm hoping like the Wayback Machine will be able to resurrect that thread someday.
Well, I do remember that there were when they had to upgrade the forum software. I remember when they upgraded the forum software, it became a little bit harder to find some of that old stuff, and you had to know how to. I think you had to know where to look. I don't know if they deleted it. I don't really remember any of that part, but I do remember going through the whole upgrade of the software and stuff. I remember dealing with these trolls. You remember XG, the XG troll that we had for a long time?
I'm not sure.
Just a virulent troll. He would come in and just make an absolute mess of the forum. Oh my God, it was quite an adventure being a moderator on that forum, because it was so huge,
Yeah.
And then of course people would divide off, and they would side with this person and side with that person.
Oh yeah. There were factions, and that was like the whole internet. And man, even till just recently, there was like the anti-Ethan faction, all over the web and some of the other forums like that.
That was huge. And I remember going through that and actually like being part of those conversations.
Oh.
And
Yeah, I told the guys who do the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast, the Stephen Novella, like, one of my favorite podcasts came from the JRF, like so much else did, and the Infidel guy. I told them, because there was that audio anomaly last year that everybody was talking about. So I was like, you got to get Ethan Weiner on your show, and I'm really hoping that they will, because that's a whole new audience for them, and they just buy books like crazy. I think they'd all buy his Audio Expert book, which would be awesome.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, that sounds like a very good match, because I know he reads the Skeptic magazine and all that. He's very much in that whole scene. So
yeah, I'm hoping they contact him. I was begging him. I'm like, you got to get this guy on. And they sounded like they were receptive to it. So
yeah,
that would be awesome. I just want I want people to hear. George Massenberg had that. He had a forum called Reason in Audio as part of one of the, I think it was like REP, one of the bigger audio forums, and he had that. And yeah, so there was a whole different culture back then. Like the forums were all in factions, and it was nasty. Like I remember I got banned at the Vegas forum a couple times, or at least suspended or whatever, and people were ugly, and it's just funny. Like most people don't know this, but Kenny Gioia was moderating one of the forums. Is it at the Womb or REP or whatever the one that the Womb came from, and he was making fun that this dumb kid was making this internet application where like you could play with your friends audio and stuff, and that was it was Ninjam.
Oh,
that's how I found Justin. And I said, all this needs is, you know, you could put a couple things here and a couple things there, and we finally, because I was walking around with this like hand drawn DAW, you know, like I had all these pages, you know, that I just kind of drew pictures and like what could a DAW do, and I looked and I saw that this Ninjam and stuff, this was really, that's exactly what he was talking about. So Kenny making fun of Justin is how I found out about Justin. And,
that's funny.
Yeah, so now Kenny comes back, and I don't know if it's his penance or not, but he makes all these Reaper videos and does all this stuff for the Reaper community. It's so cool, you know.
Which is amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I was kind of away from all that for a period of time. I completely got out of the forums after all of that stuff, and
no.
I mean the stuff dealing with, I mean, as I was working for Real Traps and you know, after you know, with all the stuff that was going down at Sound on Sound forums, and then the other studio tips and the people that were really, you know, there was these factions that had just decided to go to war, and they were going after Ethan, and it was, then there was another company that was trying to compete with Ethan, and so one of those people went after Ethan in a really really aggressive way, and I mean, just followed him everywhere on the internet and try to, you know, dog his company. And it was just like, man, you know, so at a certain point I just had to get out of the forums completely, because I didn't want to put my energy toward that anymore, you know.
Yeah, good. I mean, somehow I mellowed out, so like I'm not as bad as I used to be. I was brutal, but you know, I remember like some of those guys had followed you over to the Reaper forum, right? But this is a different kind of community. Like, I mean, they just weren't gonna, they just weren't making it. Like they're like, I think the Reaper community appreciates really good trolls that you know, are funny or whatever, because it just gives us something to talk about for a while. But I remember there was a couple of acoustic guys trying to talk smack, but they just weren't getting any traction in our forum. It was funny. Like the people just, they didn't want to hear it. They didn't understand what in the world is going on here. You know, I remember that, but I was like, wow, these people are dedicated to shutting you guys down, man. That's some extreme dedication, at least.
Well, and the sad thing about that, I mean, really, those guys, a lot of those guys over there at that Studio Tips forum that were going after Ethan so hard, I mean, they were really trying to get at the bottom of everything, get at truth. I mean, I still go back there if I want to look for lab results on a given substance, you know. I mean, that's all there, and they really, you know, they were really doing some great work. It's just, I think we had a little cult of personality with one person that decided to go after somebody else, and then it became a little crazy. So I'm glad that seems to be done now, I think.
Yeah, so. I think even the really hardcore flame wars are all kind of done. I mean, there's a whole different type of fighting now that's actually kind of terrifying. Like you're afraid to actually say stuff now, but that old culture of just destroying a forum with nonsense, I think that's all gone. I just don't see it anymore. So sometimes I see it in you see it in some little bits in forums, like, but it's just not like it was, thankfully. And in ours, we have that they have that lounge. So if you're really crazy, the threads go there, and those guys, they keep themselves entertained. It's really just not a problem like it was.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah.
But man, I remember, like, it sucks because like you want to get good information, and you know, the flame warriors might stop you from getting it. The liars or the marketers, you know, might stop you from getting it. We had a hangout the other day. I had Phil Zio on, and I was talking about this thing that happens to me at the Reaper Facebook group all the time. We have, and I seen a thread on Gearsluts that sums it up perfectly. He asked a technical question that requires a technical answer, but instead, you know, the people are all preaching this or that. You know, I think I can't even remember what it was now, but But I'm like, man, this is so dumb. Why do we every time I just copy and paste that statement to the Reaper Facebook group every once in a while because it comes up like that. And I'm like stop, you know.
I do not miss that about the forums.
Oh man.
Well, I should probably jump off here because I got
yeah.
a few things to do. It's getting it's after 11 here. And,
Oh wow. Well, that goes by fast.
I know. It was a good hang.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah. Thank you very much for coming on, and I hope people got some informative stuff before we start rambling about forums. But you need to know where all this stuff came from anyway. So there you go.
Right.
But there's some good acoustic information at the beginning here, or through most of it. I think people can, because we often don't hear. You always, oh man, it's like on that mixing thing where you hear, well, it depends. Yeah, I know it depends, but sometimes there are some general rules you can use, and you gave some real specifics, that's really what I'm trying to get at with this kind of stuff. Like,
okay.
Let's just get some specifics. What we can be specific about. Let's be specific about. And so I think you really, I think there's some gold in this. Wow, way longer than I figured. Hangout we did.
Well, good. I hope I gave you some good stuff. I feel like there's other stuff we might have covered if we had thought it out a little bit more.
Oh yeah, I've been just, like I say, the audio quality is not good with these. Eventually, if I really get into it, we'll get some. Well, I'll figure out some better stuff. But mainly, I just want the information. I don't care what it sounds like. I do care what things sound like, but in the case of getting the information or not getting the information, I'll take getting the information,
Sure.
So thanks so much for this. And
we can do another one that we actually plan out. And
yeah.
I don't know. Do you have these things set up where people can ask questions too, or not?
Yeah. So I'm just barely learning how all of this works. So for instance, that was that. Where'd it go? Yeah. So this, they could type into this chat, this YouTube real time. I'm still really learning all this stuff, but sometimes they do type into there, and we're able to answer them in real time. So that's really cool.
Okay.
But yeah, nobody showed up for this one, so nobody gets your real time questions answered. So,
all right. Well,
thanks for being on, and yeah, I'll let you know. One of these days, this is probably gonna be more scheduled out. Like, I know when it's going on exactly, but right now, I'm taking what I can get when I can get it. So
yeah, sometimes it's good to just get in and do it and start doing it.
So I figure I'll start having some manufacturers on pretty quick here. They may not want to do things live, but even if they don't, that's fine too.
Right.
And who knows? Maybe I can get Justin on here one of these days.
Oh, that'd be awesome too.
But yeah, thanks a billion, and I'll let you go. But if you have anything you want me to show, like where they can find you and stuff, I'll put it in the description if you send it to me, so we can handle that stuff. But yeah, thanks a lot, and I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody who didn't show up, and goodbye to anybody who's listening to this later on. We're signing out. If I can find the button, there we go.